not a game, it's a rich thing.
Hello everyone, welcome back, and my name is Avilash. You are watching Selenium Express, and in this lesson we're going to learn about springboot profiling. And this is one of the very important interview question. I'm getting a number of emails from you guys asking about this topic, and I know that people basically ask these questions in the interview, and I'm sure that you guys are going to be ready for this once you're going to complete this particular lesson, because it's going to be an in-depth insight to spring boot profiling or spring profile or whatever you're going to say that. So maybe a lot of time people will ask you questions straightforward, just tell me about spring boot profile, what it is, how to configure it, things like that. Or sometimes they'll ask you something tricky, like well, if you want to deploy your application into multiple environments. For an example, if you have a QA environment, you have a production environment, you have a UAT environment, maybe you can have many environments, right? And all these environments will have some set of configurations. For an example, if you are deploying your application to the production machine, that machine will have different credential, different set of DB configurations, a different set of URLs and things like that. And same goes for your QA environment. In your QA, maybe you will have a different DB, which will have different URL, different username, different password, maybe different database. Well, thing is that if you have many environments, you can have many set of configurations. So how you can maintain that particular things efficiently? And let's say if you want to create multiple data sources for different databases, then how are you going to be doing that in your Spring Boot application? So you can get some number of questions from this particular topic, or sometimes people will ask you, well, if you want to make your application code maintainable, let's say if you want to have minimal configurations and if you want to maintain that quite well using the Spring Boot profiling and with the minimal code changes, if you want to deploy your application, then how will be controlling those properties that you are keeping in your YML file or in your properties file. So basically we will be also learning that how to control our properties using environment variable and command line argument in our Spring Boot application. And also people will ask sometime that, okay, in your Spring Boot, you can configure your properties using YML file or using properties file. So which one you will be choosing? If I'll be giving you an opportunity to choose whether the YML or the properties file, which file you'll be choosing to do your Spring Boot configuration and why you are choosing one over the another, what kind of benefits you're going to get, or is there any performance related benefit you'll be getting? There are so many ways people can confuse you on this particular topic. So my intention here is to cover it in depth today so that you're going to get all these answers by the end of this particular lesson. Okay, I'm unable to talk. I'm down with a fever, and also I got a solution for that. I'm not going to code everything right here by myself right now. Rather, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use one of my video that I have used for my Spring Boot course maybe. So I'm going to attach that particular video right now here with this particular introduction, and you can go through that. That's going to be a complete in-depth deep dive so that you can cover it in pretty well manner, right? Instead of I'm gonna type out the same thing again in front of you, and I'm not feeling like to type the same thing again right now because I'm not keeping well for last few days. So I hope that I can directly join that particular file with this particular video, because you guys are asking for it, and maybe you can see that the mocks which will be coming in next few days, I'll be asking about the Spring Boot profile questions to different candidates. So maybe it's a very good topic to prepare for for your interview if you're planning to give your interview. And as I always say, do not read something just to pass an interview. Just understand it completely so that you can use it in your day-to-day project. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's get started, and I'll see you after the video. Well, so let me just go through one of the project that I have created, or let me I can start creating a simple project from scratch, right? We'll be just creating a new simple project, and this is gonna be a Spring starter project. I've already filled in a lot of details here, and I'm gonna do next, and over here I'm gonna fill in only one dependency I want here, which is gonna be Spring Wave. And also let me go with the Spring Boot DevTools as well. I just need a couple of dependencies. I'll do next, I'll do finish, and this is going to help me to create a new Spring Boot project. And once it is done, there you go, properties demo new. So right here, I'll go to source main Java, and right now inside the source main Java, let me do a particular thing, right? So what is gonna be that thing? So I'm gonna click on new, and I will go with a new interface right now, and I'm gonna put this interface inside a package called com.seleniumexpress.properties demo dot let's say beans, right? And the name of the interface is gonna be animal, and I'll do finish. So let me create an interface here called animal, and this animal is obviously gonna be an interface, and obviously I don't need anything, just right here let it be blank. And or maybe, you know, I can say just a simple method, public void make sound. So there you go, and this is my simple animal interface, and let me create a couple of implementation for this animal. So let me go with a class here called maybe dog, and you know, I'm gonna put this particular class inside the same package, right? And my dog is gonna be implementing the animal. So there you go, right? And obviously I have to override the methods that I have in the animal interface, and obviously I'm gonna fumble you know, sometime, and I'm not going to cut these you know, or crop these things because I know that you all of you who are listening to me right now, you guys know me, right? So I will not be cropping or cutting anything. I'll just be putting the raw videos directly. Cool. So right now here I got a dog class, and I got a method overridden called make sound. So I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do is sys out here, and in this sys out I'm gonna say let's say pow, right? So there you go. So I got one particular class, and maybe I'll do one more thing. I'm gonna do Control C, Control V here, and I'm gonna make it a cat right now, and the cat class is also going to be implement the animal, and here let me change it to you know, Mew here. Okay, so I got right now a couple of implementation for the animal class. If I'll do a Control T here, you can see I got cat and dog both implements the animal interface. Perfect. So now what I'm going to show you here, what we can do here, let me come to the properties demo, and let me go to the properties demo new application. Okay, and here I'm going to do one thing. Let me implements command line runner. Okay, because I want to call that method, right? I want that animal class method to be get called. So I'm gonna do what? I'm gonna add the unimplemented methods, and I'm sure that you guys know about this, you know, run method, which is there inside the command line runner, and this is gonna be picked up automatically. I think you know about this, right? So now what I'm gonna do here, let's say I will be writing that animal interfaces right here, animal, and I'll make it auto-var, right? And obviously this is gonna be a private variable. Okay, and right now I'm gonna say here animal dot make sound. There you go. So now you have to answer me, so which make sound method will be get called. So obviously I want to see the animal object, which is going to be injected by Spring here, and obviously if the dog object will be injected just right here, then it is going to be calling the dog implementation, right? It will be calling this particular make sound method, and if I'll go back to the main application, and if this particular animal will have the cat object, then this make sound will go to the cat to this particular make sound method, and it's going to print out Mew. So if I'm going to run this application, what do you think? Which is going to be which make sound method it is going to be, you know, logged just right here. And of course, the first thing is that obviously this application is not going to be working, because right now if you see the implementation of animals, if I'll go to the cat, first of all, this cat is not at all a component yet. So I'm going to make it a component, right? and I have to make it a component just like this, because if I want to auto where the cat object just right here with this animal variable, then obviously that object need to be created by Spring, then only the auto wearing can happen. And also I'll do one more thing. I'll go to the dog implementation, the dog class implementation, and also I'll make sure to make it a component, right? So I got couple of instances or couple of implementation of animal right now. One is called dog and one is called, if I'll go to here, one is dog and one is cat, and both of the classes is right now annotated with add component. And right now, if I'm going to close out everything, and if I am going to do a right click, run as, and run as Spring Boot app, and obviously you'll see that we'll have one more exception, and that exception is going to be, pretty identical for you guys, I believe, because you have completed my Spring course, the Spring Core course, or if you are getting trained from Ramesh, then obviously I'm sure that you would have already gone through this. So obviously it is saying make one primary so that one animal class instance can be picked up. Right now the problem is here that we got two beans found. So right now the Spring is getting confused, like which bean to inject just right here into this animal. So it is saying that, well, I got two things, one is called cat, one is called dog, but I don't know which bean to inject for this animal. Well, one thing I'm going to tell you, you can obviously fix it out by making it a qualifier or making one of the things primary. For an example, if I'll go to animal, and if I'll go one of the implementation of this animal, let's say if I'll go to the cat, and if I want to make the cat primary, so I'm going to simply say primary here. And obviously right now the cat instance will be created because it's a primary. I have given the importance to this, so obviously this animal will be, the cat object will be injected, and it's going to be printing me mew. So if I'll go here, implementation, if I'll go to the cat one, so obviously this one will be printed, right? And also before I run this, I'm going to do this out, and I'm going to say animal here. Okay, so right now also we can see which animal object which is getting injected to this animal, to this particular variable. And I hope that you all are clear with this. So now let me do a right click, run as, and run it as Spring Boot app. Let's see what is going to happen. So I believe you guys can see my console, and you can see it's a cat object because the cat is the primary, and mew is just right here as well, because now the cat class object this particular animal instance got, so obviously it is calling the cat class make sound method. If I'll go to the implementation, it is obviously going to the cat class make sound method, and it is printing this one. Well, I have fixed this with add primary, but I don't want to use this primary right now because I'm going to teach you something new. Okay, so now what you can do, if you want to control which one to be get executed, which particular variation you want, just right here, you want a cat one or you want a dog one. So if I'll go to the animal, open implementation, dog, so I got two things, right? So which one to use, either to use the dog one or to use the cat one, right? So I can control the behavior, I mean which particular object will be injected to this guy. I can control that with some profiles. So for the cat here, I'm going to say profile, and I'm going to say cat profile. This is a cat, right? I'm going to use this annotation called profile, and I'm going to make it cat. First of all, let me stop the instance, and if I'll go to the dog, all right, and here also I'll make a profile, and the profile will be dog. Sorry, this is going to be a dog profile, and this is going to be a cat profile. Okay, so now the way I can do an injection to this animal here by using my application.properties file. So what I'm going to do here, I'll go to the source main resources, application.properties, and I'm going to just type here called profile. So I'm going to write here profile, and you will see something called spring.profiles.active, right? So which is going to be my active profile? I'm going to say cat is going to be my active profile. So if I'm going to do Control S, and if I'm going to run this application again, So you will see the cat object will be created and will be injected to this particular animal class object, and mu will be printed. And you can see mu is getting printed, the cat reference is getting printed by this run method. So here cat is getting printed, right? Cat object is getting printed, and the cat class make sound method is getting called, and this animal is having the cat instance. So right now if I'll go to my application.properties file, and if I'm going to change it to dog, because also I remember I got a dog profile here as well, now I can see the dog instance has been injected, and Bhau is something which is printing into the console. So things are looking good, isn't it? So I think this is just going to give you a little bit of understanding about the profiling. So we can create profiles, and we can basically control the things which one will be injected to this particular instance called animal in my application.properties file using the profiles. So this is just one way of doing things, and this is just to make you guys introduced to profiling, and I'm gonna tell you some new things just right now. Sorry guys, I'm just having my coffee in the same time, so if you are just hearing some drinking or eating sound, some weird sound, forgive me for that. And obviously I'm not going to edit this out, guys. It's gonna take me a lot of time, so I'm gonna use the raw video, and I'm gonna put that in the media file. Just download it and just bear me for next 2-3 days. I hope you guys understand. And right now also, if you are hearing some wind sound, I mean I have closed all my doors and windows, but still maybe you will be able to hear some wind sound as well. It's the situation is right now going to be pretty horrible for the next 2 days. Well, without wasting any time, let's go to new things, and I'm going to tell you something new right now. So guys, one more thing. Okay, this is going to be an interesting thing, but I hope that you guys can understand this as well. So if I'll go to the cat, okay, and so here I'm writing add component, but let's say, if you don't want to create the bean with add component, so obviously if I'm going to remove add component from here, so you can also do the same thing by creating a bean manually. So basically what you can do, you can go to, so right now you can see I have removed the add component from the cat, so the cat is no longer a bean managed by Spring. So even though if I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to make it cat, still I think right now we got a problem here, see, because right now I have removed that particular properties, and I didn't make it a component. So it is saying that, what? So you can see that consider defining the type com.selenium express the property demo that beans.animal in your configurations, because for this cat, right, so it is basically pointing to a particular profile which does not exist because I removed that add component annotation. So what I'm going to do, I'll go to here, and here I can create a bean directly instead of using add component annotation. What I'm going to do here, only I'm going to create a cat instance. So cat, let's say cat obj, and I'm going to return a new cat here. And right now this is going to be a bean. I'm going to make it a add bean. So instead of using add component annotation, what I'm trying to do here, if I'm going to go to the cat.java, this profile right now, I'm going to cut it right now, and I'm going to paste it inside this, just before this particular bean, right? So now I just want to let you know that you can also create beans just like this, and you can also write add profile before the bean as well, right? Hopefully this is making sense to you right now. So now if I'm gonna go here, you can see menu is getting printed, and obviously cat instance you can see which is getting injected to this particular animal. So either you can define your beans just like this, or the way I have done it in the doc class, you can also write add component and profile just like this. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense to you right now. So I'm gonna save everything, and let me just go with something different. Control-Shift-O to remove all the unnecessary imports, and I'm gonna close out all the other classes. So close others, and I want to save them as well. There you go. Let me stop my application, and let me tell you a another way you can use your profiling. Okay, so maybe before we go to the advanced feature of profiling or the profile annotation of Spring Boot or the way profile works in Spring Boot, I'm going to tell you one more thing. So now let's do one thing. Let me close this thing as well. Let me clear out my console. And now what I'm going to do, imagine in my beans, I got one class. Okay, this is gonna be a class called my data source. Okay, so imagine there is a class called my data source. Okay, and in this my data source class, this is something really simple. I think you understood this in your Spring Core days. So imagine I have a couple of properties here. So in a data source, what kind of properties we have? Maybe URL. So private string URL. So URL is going to one of my variable, private string password, and one more I'm going to take private string username, control S, and let me just generate the getters and setters for all these things. Source, generate getters and setters. Where is that? Generate getters and setters. Select everything, do generate, and everything will be there. Okay, so this looks good. So now I'm going to give you a task. Basically, if I'll go to your application.properties file, where is that? Inside my source main resources. So now I want to give you a very small task. Imagine I have some properties defined for my data source. So the way I can define properties, this is my own properties. Don't think about your JPA properties or your Spring.data source properties. Those are different things. This particular class I have just created just to show you some samples. So imagine I have some properties defined here. So I'm going to say my data source, and I'm going to say my data source, and I'm going to say username is equal to, let's say, super user. Okay, super user. And again, I'm gonna copy this, control C, paste it just right here, and I'm gonna say dot password is equal to let's say super password. Okay, there you go. I got a couple of properties just right here in my application.properties file. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to give you a task. Okay, imagine okay, this is going to be pretty easy for you to to load this particular properties. Maybe let's start it from a difficult one. Imagine I got a new properties here. So I'll go to file, and I'm going to say data source dot properties file. Okay, and let me say my data source dot properties file. Okay, I'm going to do a finish here, and that couple of properties I'm going to bring into here, and I'm going to remove those properties from here. In my application.properties file, I don't have anything. Okay, so I got a new file here called my data source.properties, and these are the couple of things that I got here. Okay, so now what I want to load the properties from this properties file, and the bean that I have created, which is my data source, I want to inject those properties to this particular variables. So how I'll be doing it, think about it. So what I can do right now, let me create a new file, and maybe this is gonna be my configuration. Let me say my configuration. This is gonna be my configuration class, and I want to do what? Imagine I want to make this file my configuration file. Okay, and what I want to do, I want to create a bean here. So instead of creating bean just right here, I just created a new configuration file, and I want to create my bean for the data source. So this particular object I want to create my data source. So let me go to my configuration, and I'm going to create a bean for my data source. So my data source, and what I'm going to do, I'm gonna make it a bean. So Spring is gonna call this particular method, and obviously this is gonna be a public method. What will happen if I'll make it a private method? Obviously this particular bean will not work, because the bean should be always defined as public, because Spring is gonna access this particular methods and gonna call this methods. If it is gonna be a private methods, Spring won't be able to call this particular method, and it is gonna ended up giving you some exception. Okay, and it is going to tell you that, hey, just make this method public. So make sure all your beans are public. So the next thing that I'm going to do here, so I'm going to return a my data source instance. So my data source is equal to new my data source. So basically I'm creating a bean of this guy, and I'm going to return my data source is right here. Okay, so now the challenge for you guys right now, obviously if I'm going to print this my data source, my data, let's say sysout my data source, obviously you can see that the data source will be, there will not be anything inside the data source. If I'm going to do my data source dot get username plus maybe my data source dot get password, obviously this will be null and null. So let's see what is going to happen if I'm going to do Control S. Obviously this is going to be picked up automatically, and I believe I'll be getting the username and password in my console. Maybe I'm going to give a log here as well. So I'm going to say here printing my data source object, right? Control S. So this is the line I want to print. I'll restore it. I'll go back to here. I believe that I have turned off the instance already. So I'm going to run this application again. So let's see. Obviously the data source will be printed, but as you guys see here, is printing my data source reference as null and null, right? So obviously, there is nothing inside this my data source. So right now, the tags that I'm going to give you, imagine I want to accept 3 string variable here: username, string password, and string URL. Obviously I don't have any URL, so let's go with username and password. So I will get the username and password from here. Okay, and this username and password, I want to accept it, and then I'm going to inject it with this my data source, right? So right now, if you can see in my console, so it is saying the parameter 0 of the method data source right now is required a bean type of java.lang.string. So obviously these beans it is looking for those beans, but it cannot be found. So right now this username and password we have to inject right here, and this username and password we have to get those properties, or we have to set those properties by fetching it from our my data source properties. From here we have to paste the properties, then we have to inject it to the username and the password, and once we get the properties just right here, maybe with this my data source instance, I'm going to say my data source dot set username, and I'm going to set this particular username to here, and then I can just do my data source dot set password, and I'm going to set this password to just right here. But right now obviously this username and this password is not there, so obviously whenever Spring is going to create a bean for me, obviously it doesn't know what is the value it need to inject, and obviously it is going to throw me the exception. Right now if I'm going to do what, if I'll do right click, run as, and if I'm going to start the Spring Boot application, you're going to see that I'm going to get an exception. So as you can see, parameter 0, obviously it is failing. My data source bean, obviously this is my data source bean. Okay, now for this the bean is not able to create, the bean because of the my configuration for this guy, my configuration, it got this particular method. For this is failing to create the bean because of the parameter, which is java.lang.string, and it cannot be found, and it's for the parameter 0. So obviously it is not able to inject this one, so it is not looking for this one straight away. It is throwing me the exception. So right now if I want to inject the value, I got a couple of ways. Maybe I spoke about the environment class about the environment class before, but now I'll be using @value annotation. So maybe I can use just @value annotation and @value annotation, and inside this I'm gonna load that particular properties. I'm gonna load this guy. Control C this, because I want to load this particular username and password. It defined here in my datasource properties file. So I'll go to my configuration.java, just right here, how to load the dynamic properties by using the Spring EL expression. And here I'm gonna paste my properties name, and obviously this is the EL expression that I'm using for Spring. Okay, so now this is the thing that I want to do. Same thing, I can copy it from here, and I can go back to here, and I'm going to do paste. Okay, @value, and this is what I want to paste here. And right here I want to change the username to whatever the properties that I got. Let me copy it completely. Anyhow, I don't trust my spelling. I'm going to paste it just right here. I'm going to say Control S, and there you go. Right now it's looking comfortable, right? I think you can understand. So username is a parameter. This particular parameter value will be pasted from the properties called my_datasource.username, and for this the value will be pasted from here. Okay, from this particular property that we have defined here. So now what I can do, if I do Control S, and if I'm gonna do a start, can I start my application, which is this one? Can I do a start? You can see again we're going to get an exception here, and the exception here is error creating the bean name. My data source is not able to create that particular bean because of the unexpected exception during the bean creation, illegal argument exception, and could not resolve the placeholder my_datasource.username. So it is not able to load the my_datasource.username. This particular property is not able to load. Why is that? I think the problem is my_datasource.properties, this particular properties file, if I'm going to do link to editor, this particular file we are not loading. We have to load that particular file right here in our my configuration in this particular class. So how to load that particular file? Because here before using @value, we have to tell that from which file it has to look into this particular properties, and this particular properties are available inside this file called my_datasource.properties, which is this one. So what I'm going to do here I'm going to use @property source. So @property source, and here what I can do, I can provide my property source, and that property source is available just right here, my data source. It is available inside the class path, right? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to say class path : then I can copy this properties file. I don't want to type it by myself, and I'll go here and I'll do Control V. Okay, there we go, Control S. Now if I'm going to run this application, I believe this is going to work fine for me. Okay, let's see that. And as you can see, just right here, it is reading my data source from here, from the super user and from the super password. Super user and super password is reading. This thing is reading from here, right? So the things are working fine. So I think it is pretty understandable. So now I just want to give you one more problem here. Okay, first of all, let me close out everything. Maybe I'm going to ask you a simple question just to check whether we understand these things or not. I'm gonna go to animal. Let's not go to animal. Let me go to application.properties. Okay, and imagine here I got one property. Let's say Selenium Express dot, let's say my company dot name, and let's say Selenium Express is the company name, right? So this is gonna be the key, this is gonna be the value, and make sure that these particular properties I'm I'm placing this particular properties inside the application.properties file, not inside the datasource.properties file. So now my question here that if I want to read this particular file, let's say if I want to read this particular file inside some configuration file, let's say inside this configuration file, I want to read this, okay? I want to print that particular thing inside the main method. So how I'm going to do it? Let's say here I'm getting a task that I have to read the properties from the application.properties file. So how I'm going to do it? So can I just write here, let's say, can I just define a string here, string company name, and can I make it at value, okay, just right here, and can I say the name of the value that I have given there? So the name of the value that I have given there and also I have missed the dollar. So the name of the value that I've given there in the application.properties is mycompany.name. If I'm going to copy that, if I'm going to come back to this, and if I'm going to paste it just right here, so what do you think? The value for company name will be injected or not? So let's say if I'm going to go to this particular run method, if I'm going to do another sysout, okay, and let's say my company name is, if I'm gonna do control space company name, then what do you think? This company name will be printed or not? This company name will be printed, and of course obviously you can see in the console that the company name has successfully printed here, called Selenium Express. So now from this example I wanted to give you, see, I have used a different configuration file. Obviously I told you that this particular class, if I'll do link to editor, properties demo new application, this is also a configuration class. Why it is a configuration class? Because this Spring Boot application is having one annotation called Spring Boot configuration. So obviously instead of writing at configuration, I mean, if I'm going to using this particular annotation, this automatically has that add configuration annotation. That's why I'm able to create beans inside this, right? So one thing is that I just want to tell you, this particular company name is reading the value from this particular properties, which is inside the application.properties file. So inside the application.properties file, we have this particular value and this particular key. This key, I mean, we don't have to locate this key, because by default this particular class knows that it has to load the file from the application.properties file, because the application.properties file, this particular file is automatically loaded to this particular class, right? So you don't have to load it explicitly by writing add property source the way I have done it inside the other bean that I have created. The way that I have done it just right here, you don't have to do the same thing right here. Okay, so you can see no property source annotation, no add property source annotation, but still I'm able to load the value to company name, and obviously I'm able to print that particular thing just right here, what you can see in the console. So hopefully this makes sense. So I have just taken a small break and just came up with an idea what to teach you next. So just give me a minute. I'm gonna use my the whiteboard here just to show you something. Okay, so now let me tell you something just right here. Let me turn my tablet on. Okay, so now you can see, just think about one thing, guys. Just forget about whatever you studied. I mean, those are very basic things. Right now, let's study something new. Okay, so think about, why do we need the profile? Okay, and what is the use of the profiles in Spring Boot? Imagine whenever you are working with application, imagine, right now this is you, and you are working with your computer. I'm pretty good at drawing as well. You can see, pretty nice sketch. So I don't want to receive any compliment because of my drawing. So imagine, you have a laptop and, you paste the code from Git and you work in this laptop, right? And it's recording. Okay, it's recording. Now this is you are working with your local machine, right? And once you stop writing the code, once you complete writing the code, you want to test your code. So you'll have different environment, like this is your dev environment, where the developers, once they are done with their coding, they will just deploy their var or jar just right here just to test it out. And also they will have one more environment. This is for QA. Like once the developer test their application, they will push the things to the QA, and the QA will then again test the software. And imagine this is a QA environment, and at last there will be a UAT environment, or there is a production environment. And once the tester tests the var, they will push the changes to the production. The developer will be deploy the changes to the production, and obviously the things will be go live just right here whenever we put the things in the production. I think everyone here, you guys are working and you're pretty aware about this. But one thing here is, all these things got a different database, right? The production will have a different database, the QA will have a different database, the dev will have a different database. All these environments will get the data from a different database. This QA also should be connected to a QA database. The production should connect to a production database, right? And imagine about where basically this dev code is running. Obviously this should be hosted inside a server, right? And obviously this server will have separate name, separate URL, separate port number, things like that. And obviously this QA will have maybe it will run in a separate port number. And the QA, to connect to the QA machine, we should have a different URL, because this will be a different server. And obviously this will be a different machine as well, a different computer, different laptop, different server, whatever you think about, this is a different machine, right? And obviously this will have a different URL. If you want to connect to this particular machine, you have to hit the URL to connect to the machine, right? So you'll have different URL, different port number, things like that. And obviously this database also will have a different URL, maybe port number, username, password. All the database have a different username, different password, different URL. Imagine this is MySQL, okay? MySQL. Maybe this is something else in the dev environment, right? So or if it is the same database, even if it is the same database also we're using everywhere, maybe not the same database, the same what we can say, that same database vendor we're using, where we have a MySQL database here, we have a MySQL database here, and we have a MySQL database in the dev as well. But this database should have the different username, different port number, different username, different password. This is a different database, so it should have a different URL, right? Different username, different password. And obviously this will have a different username, different password. So these things will vary across the environment, that you are working with. So we should have something to control with the environment. We cannot hard code the username, port number, URL, or things like that. Okay, so how can we control these things? Because let's say you have written your application, right? You have written your application code just right here. And also, let's say you are writing this application in your local. So this is you, right? You are writing that particular application in your local. So you will also write the username, password, and URL to connect to your database. So this thing you are hard coding here. So let's say you are creating a var or jar out of this application. Now you are taking this var and you are putting this inside the dev environment. Right now that particular thing will not work here, because this particular database will have a different username, different password, different URL. And obviously if you put this var just right here, right now again this particular this QA system will not work, because it will have a different database having different username, port number, password, and things like that. So how we will be managing this particular things? This is something that we'll be just learning just right here. So we don't have to hard code the username. This is what I'm saying. We don't have to hard code the password. We don't have to hard code the URLs. So we as a beginner do the same mistake, right? We just hard code the username, password, everything, we just hard code it. So now let's see how we can manage that particular things. Where is my STS? Okay. Now imagine if I'm going to stop everything. Imagine this is some code that I have written. Okay. So now one thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to close out everything. I'm gonna do right click here, I'll do run as, and I'll just start my Spring Boot app. Now just think, you guys know, right? This particular Spring Boot app will be started. Okay, it will be starting in port number 8080. So right now, if I'm gonna, take a var of this, if I'm gonna build this application, take the var and put it inside my QA machine, and I want in my QA, this particular application should run in port number 9090. Okay, then how to control that? Because right now, imagine by default in this file, let's say this is my application.properties file. If I have server.port here, can I write just port here, server.port, and imagine by default the port which I have here is 8080, or let's say 8081. Control S. If you're gonna see here right now, the application is up and running in port number 8081, right? So now what I want, when I am taking the same application to my QA environment, it should run in port number 9091. Okay, because the 8081 has already been occupied by some other thing. So if I'm gonna run the same application in my QA environment with 8081, then obviously it's gonna be failing. So I want that this application should run with port number 9091 in my QA. So if I want to do that, what I can do, I can go to source main resources, and here I can create one more properties. Okay, so that properties I should create just like this. I'll go to the file. I will be creating another application.properties file. Application, make sure this name is gonna be, there should not be any typo, application.properties, right? But the application.properties file is already exist here, right? So now what I want, just right here, so I don't want to create that inside the template. That's why it's not giving me any error. That's why I'm just wondering. I have to take the same name, application.properties. I have to go to here to the resources, and here only I have to create the file, and I have to name that with application.properties. You can see the application.properties is already exist. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do, let's say I want to create a new profile for my QA environment. My QA specific configuration, I'm gonna put it just in my profile, the QA profile. So this is gonna be my profile name. What I have done, after the application, I have given a dash, and I'm gonna write my profile name. I'm writing here QA, but you can write here quality assurance. That's not a problem. You can write here anything, but I'm gonna write here QA, but make sure there should be a application. It should be starting with application. There should be a dash after that, and then your profile name. I'll do a finish. So I got a application-qa.properties file. So now here what I can do, here I can define server.port of 9091. Okay, so now what I want, when someone is deploying this application in the QA environment, okay, the application should start up with the port number 9091. Okay, so right now what I can do, I'll go to my application.properties file. Here the default port is 8081. So right now if I'm gonna do, there is some error, but basically this is not an error. I can just do a maven update project. That should fix this issue. Okay, it's gone. Right now, simply if I'm gonna run this, you know that it's gonna start with the port number 8081. If I'm gonna do run as Spring Boot app, it's gonna start with 8081. Can I see that application port number? 8081 is starting with. But I want, let's say if I'm deploying this application or I'm starting this application in the QA environment, it should start with 9091. It should get the properties from this particular file called application-qa.properties. Then how can I make it happen? So for that, you have to go to your main application.properties file, which is here. And you have to write spring.profile.active. You have to use the exact same thing. Well, I have something already defined here. So I'm going to just do one thing. I'm going to do a comma here. And I'm going to say my profile name. My profile name is QA. Okay, my profile name is QA, right? Profile name is after dash, whatever you have, that's your profile name. So my profile name is QA. So I'm going to say Control S. So profile also supports comma here. So you can just do profile name, comma, another profile name, comma. You can just write things just like this. Now I have changed my profile name. Now if you'll see, if I'm going to run my application, so right now it is going to read the server. You can see I have a server.port here, which is 8081. Now the profile one will get the priority. Right now here also I got a server.port. Right now this one will get the priority. So right now my application will start up with 1991. So now that thing will be start up because in my main application.properties I'm saying that get the profile for QA, and QA profile is here, just right here, application dash QA, right? So let's see that whether this is working or not. I'm gonna do right click, run as Springboot app. Let's see whether it is starting with 1991, and there you go. Right now it's starting 1991, and imagine now you have so many environment. You have QA environment, you have production environment, you have UAT environment. So you can keep creating files just right here. You can just come to here. Otherwise, I can just simply copy this. Okay, and I'm gonna paste it inside source main resources, Control V, and make it application-dev, right? So dev is my profile name. You can say development, but I'm gonna say it here dev, and I'm gonna do OK. And in my dev environment, where is my dev properties? Here I'm gonna change it to, let's say, 9097. Okay, this is my new port number for my dev environment. Now let me close everything. Let me stop everything. Let me go to the main application.properties file. Here I'm gonna check with the dev environment right now. Dev, Control S. Right now if it is dev, right now this dev properties will be picked up. Now Control S it here. Run this, run as Springboot app. You can see my port number will be 9097 right now. There we go, 9097. Okay, so now what about if I'll go to the main application.properties file and change it to QA? I'm gonna stop this application because I want to start it again, and I want to change the profile to QA. Control S, and now if I'm gonna start it, then the QA port number will be up. Run a Springboot app. So now you will see the QA port number is up right now. What is that? There we go, 9091. The QA port number is 9091, right? And if you are not going to define any profiles just right here, then obviously whatever the port number that you have defined in your main application, that's gonna be working here. So now if I'm gonna see here, it is gonna open port number 8081. Okay, I hope it is making sense. Right now we are creating different profiles for our QA and dev. It's a very simple example that I have given, but now might be you will have this question. I know if it is a live session, you would have asked me this. So what about Abhilash, someone gonna write like, QA, comma, dev, then what will happen? So think about this, right? Why do you want to write like this? Why do you want to write like this? Because you have the server.port. Either you want to up this in 1991 or you want to make it up in 1997. So which one you want to choose? So you have to choose only one just right here. But if you'll go crazy and write like this, so I think Spring Boot will not throw you an exception, but I think through alphabetically, or I think it's going to search alphabetically here, Q and D. I think D will get the preference and it is going to get the property from dev. So can I check that out? See, 1997 right now is running. So let's get the properties from the dev 1997. So 1997 got the priority. So even if you're gonna write two, Spring Boot is gonna get a preference to automatically. It's gonna choose one profile. So make sure you're gonna choose one profile. So if you have couple of properties defined in your main application.properties file and inside your properties, then profile one will get the preference. Okay, Control S. Now it will be changed to 8081. Okay, cool. So this is one thing. Now let me go to the next thing. So let me take a small break and I'm gonna start again. Right, so now let's go with something else, right? And I'm gonna tell you an exciting thing right here. Maybe you'll have these questions in your mind already. So Abhilash, so what do you want? So if you want to, get aware of this particular file, particular project. And if you're gonna deploy this particular project into your QA, so do you want your dev guy or your QA to go to the application.properties file, and let's say someone wants to change the port number? So do you want him to, change the port number, just change the profile here to QA? So obviously he has to, or she has to open this particular application.properties file, and once he does change it to QA, let's say someone is trying to deploy this particular application to the QA environment, then he has to change it to QA so that his server port number can change it to 9091. So without changing the properties, just right here, the spring profile.active property to QA, how can I set the port number? How can I set my some details regarding my application? And that is a pretty nice question, and I'll just show you a couple of ways, and we'll do a exercise just right now. So now what I'm gonna do, if I'm gonna run your application right now, if I'm gonna do run as Spring Boot application, my profiles is pointing to QA. So you can see right now the port number that is getting activated is 9091. So if I'm gonna go to QA.properties, you can see it is 9091 just right here. So it is getting started with 9091. So basically what I have done, I have came here and I've changed the profile, active profile, to QA. Then only I was able to control the port number. So let's say if you are a debug guy and you are deploying this application directly to the port, to a QA environment, and you want to control a particular port number, that also you can do through the environment variables or through the program arguments, right? So what I mean by that, if I'm going to do run as, and if I'm going to do run configuration, I'm fumbling a little, I'm sorry. If I'll do run configuration, and if I'll go to this arguments, these are your program arguments, right? I don't know why I'm fumbling. Okay, so you can set your arguments just right here, or you can set your arguments just right here, the environment. Okay, so you can set your arguments just right here or just right here. Let's first try setting up some arguments just right here. For an example, someone is trying to deploy this application. Okay, this is the port number he or she wants to change. He can copy this particular variable right now. And let's say I'm just closing everything, and I'm also stopping this application. I'm closing everything just right here. I can just simply do right click. I can go to run as, run configuration, and let's say I want to change the port number. Okay, so I'll go to the arguments. This is my program arguments. Okay, it's a tongue twister for me or something. Today only I'm having the problem. All right, I'll just try this out after the class. Okay, so I'll just do Control V here, and before this I'm gonna give a dash, and I will just give a equal to, and I can set my port number just right here. Let's say my port number is gonna be 8799. This is the port number I want. Can I do apply, run? Let's see whether my port number is getting changed to something else. And there you go, 8799 is my port number. So I have not changed anything in my application.properties file, but I have controlled it from, from my arguments. Okay. So this is one way of doing things. One more example, maybe before we go to the next, exercise that we'll be doing. I'm going to stop my application. If I will go to right now to my application.properties file, let's say I have my company name defined here in my application.properties file. My company name is mycompany.name, right? It is right now Selenium Express. If I want to change it to something, if I want to change it to Puma, or if I want to change it to let's say some other company, then how I can set this particular properties? You can do the same thing. You can copy this, Control C. So right now you can see right now your company name also I'm printing somewhere, right? If I'll go to the source main Java, if I'll go to the main application, your company name also I'm injecting just right here, which is reading from your variable, okay, defined in your application.properties file, and I'm printing it just right here. Company name, I'm printing it just right here, right? So this thing you can see my company name is Selenium Express because of this line. If I want to control it, then what I can do, you can basically go to your application, you can go to run as, you can click on run configuration. Again, you can change your program properties just right here. Well, for now I'm just removing it from the argument. You can just do the same thing. You can do dash dash, paste the property name that I have copied from my application.properties file. Can I change it to, let's say, Puma, right? Can I do apply and run? Let's see what is going to happen right now. And you can see my company name is right now Puma. So I'm able to change my properties of this company name. So this company name is reading the value from here, which is from the application.properties file. But these things I'm controlling through the arguments, right? So now the same thing also I can change it through my environment variable. So I'm gonna tell you that as well. So for now, I'm gonna do right click. I'll just show you another way. I'll go to run as, I'll do run configuration. Now let me go to the arguments. Let me clear this out. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I can go to your environment, this particular section. This is here also you can set your environment variables. I can click on add, right? And here I have to set the name. Okay, the name is going to be this, but I have to make sure I am going to make it capital later. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to say, what was the name? My company, right? Can I see it just right here? My company. This one I want to convert it to capital. So I'm going to say my COMP, then dot will be replaced by underscore, and this name I want to change the name to capital, and the value I want to set to, let's say, something else. Let's say Nike. All right. So I'm going to do OK. So my environment variable is right now set here. I can just do apply and run. Let's see the company name here. Now let's observe the company name. Failed to start. Why is that? It's already in use, 1991. So maybe multiple instances are running. Let me stop this instance. Let me clear everything. Let me do right click, run as, run configuration, where I'll be setting up my environment variable. Okay, and I'm gonna say run. Let's see my company name right now, finger crossed, and I feel this is gonna be changed to Nike, right? Now you see here I have the company name has been defined in my application.properties file, and I have overridden the same thing using the environment variable, right? And also one more thing, I can show you one more thing. If I'm gonna copy this, okay, right now obviously this one is not getting displayed and Nike is getting the priority because of the hierarchy, right? The hierarchy is first the environment one is going to take the priority over the application.properties one. And I'm going to show you one more thing. If I'm going to do run as, where is that run as? Okay, run as, run configuration. And if I'm going to go to environment, here my property is set, right? This one also I can override through the argument. So this one will have less priority than the argument one. Here also I can just do dash dash control V, my company name, and let me change it to something else. And let me change it to, no name. All right, so apply, run, and now both of my things are set right now. Again, multiple instances are running. So let me stop the thing and let me clear out everything. Do right click here, do a run as and run configuration. Okay, so now in the arguments here it is no name. Environment property also I have set it to Nike. I got this property set in 3 different places. I have it in my application.properties file. Okay, and then I'm overriding that to this Selenium Express to Nike through my environment, through this one. And now I have also set the same property name just right here to no name. So whatever you are placing here in the argument, that's going to take the priority over the environment. So environment is less powerful than this argument. So you can pass your properties from here, and also you can pass your properties from arguments. But if you have the same properties defined in the arguments, then this is going to take the priority. So let's try this. Can I do the run? So no name should be the answer. So let's see that. company name is not defined. Why is that? Can I do stop? Okay, can I try this again? Right click. I believe I'm right. Can I do run as run configuration? And if I'll go to arguments, maybe I have given it space before it. Now let me try this. Apply and run. There you go. No, it is only saying no, but the name is not coming. Okay, can I do stop it? Because I have given a space. Is that the reason? Run configuration. Can I go to arguments? No name. Can I make it a string? Can I pass my variable just like this as a string? Can I do apply and run? It should say no name. Yeah, now it is saying no name, right? So that is the hierarchy that you have to see. First, the application properties. If this particular properties will be there in the profile, okay, let's say the same thing, the my company.name will be there in one of your profile. Let's say if I'm going to put it inside the QA, Control P, just understand the hierarchy here. Let's say I'm putting here something else. Let's say here I'm going to say my company name is going to be Cell EXP. Okay, so now imagine if I'm going to stop everything. Okay, if I'll go to my application.properties file, okay, I got my company.name as Selenium Express. So this is the first priority right now. Okay, but my profile active is QA, right? So the QA one will get the priority over this one. The QA one is what? Cell XP. Now cell XP should be printed. If I'm going to do here, right click, run as, run configuration. And if I'm going to remove everything from this argument and remove everything from the environment, then this SEL EXP will be printed to my console. Maybe you can try that. Okay. And after that, so if I'll come back to here, the QA one will get the priority. The profile one will get the priority over this one. And now imagine you have this one defined and you have the QA profile defined, and in the profile also you got that particular property just right here. And also whenever you are running this application, you are doing run as and run configuration. If you are going to go to environment and define this one, then obviously this Nike one will get the priority over this one. Okay, Selenium Express. Okay, Selenium Express, and this is the list one. This will get the list priority, then the profile will get the priority, then the environment will get the priority, then Nike will be printed to my console. And also if I have the arguments defined, this will have the highest priority, I believe. So this one right now you should have in the console. So now if I'm going to do run, you'll see that right now no name will be printed in the console. So there you go, no name, because this is having the highest priority. Right now if I'm going to do stop this, if I'm going to go to run as, run configuration, and if I am going to environment, okay, let me go to argument. Let me remove this argument. Sorry, which one I was using? I have just clicked it somewhere else. Properties, arguments. Okay, if I'm going to remove this, then obviously the environment one will take the priority. If I'll do apply, run, now you'll see the environment one will get the priority. Nike is getting printed. All right, hopefully this is clear. Okay, so now let's do one more thing. Okay, let me do one more thing. So now let's not get confused with all these things. Let me remove this LXP from here. Also let me remove the server.port from here. So in my QA properties there is nothing. And also let me go to my dev properties. Let me remove the server.port from here as well. So there is nothing here, right? So everything is looking good and clean. So just want to let you know about that priority thing and how the hierarchy works. So what I'm going to do, I will go to my data source. This is my data source defined, right? So imagine for QA, the data source property like the username and password will be different. For dev, it will be different. For QA, it will be different. For production, it will be different. So what I want, this data source properties, whatever I have here, I'm going to cut it. I'm going to close this thing. I'm going to do save. And this my data source properties, I want to delete it. and I want to set the data source based on the profile. Let's say for QA profile, this data source dot username is gonna be data source user, and for this it's gonna be data source, let's say QA environment I am in, right? So let me say QA user, and let me say QA password. Okay, Control S. So in the dev properties, let me copy this to same thing, paste it here, and here I can say dev user and dev password. Okay, password is dev password, username is dev user. So now what I want, okay, if I'll go to the my configuration, okay, so here if you see this code that we have done previously, here we are getting the data source username and data source password, and we are getting it from where? Getting it from my data source dot properties. I don't want to do this. Okay, I want this my data source username and this particular my data source dot password, these things to be picked up from the profile. So first of all, can I remove this particular thing? I don't want it. Okay, because this particular thing will be automatically detected. The dev or QA, these things will be automatically detected because it starts with application, and I will be load these two things from the application.properties file. So what I want right now, this username and password of my data source bean that I am creating, this should have the QA property. Okay, so the QA properties have the username as QA user and QA password. So anyhow, if the QA user and the QA password will be injected to this username and password, and if I'll be reading this particular properties from application-qa.properties, then this thing will be injected to here, and here only I'm getting QA user and QA password, and obviously I'll be printing, I'll be getting QA user and password. And to control that, you already know, if I'll go to application.properties, already it is pointing to QA. So I hope the QA user and QA password will be printed to my console. So now if I'm going to do Control S, we have some problem in the pom.xml. To right click, map in and update project. So that's gonna do, let's do a force update. Okay, so there you go. So right now, if I'm gonna run this application, right click, run as Spring Boot app. So let's see. So there you go, QA user and QA password. So while I'm printing, the QA stuff is getting injected because of the profile that I have defined in the main application.properties. So in the main application.properties, these things is defined. If I'm going to change it to dev, Control S, if I'm going to stop this, okay, and let me rerun it again. So you will see right now the dev related username and password will be printed. So dev user, dev password. So right now, right now, obviously I am not creating any actual data source object, but whenever you are creating an actual data source object, you can control the username password that you are injecting for your application, isn't it? So you can implement this particular thing in your project, whatever the project you are doing. If you have some different machine where you are deploying, then obviously, this particular thing will work for you. Perfect. So one more thing, guys, this is just a question I want to ask you. If I'll go to your, main application.properties, here the dev profile is activated. In your dev profile, the dev user and dev password will be read from this one. So now if I'm going to do right click, if I'm going to, first I'm going to stop this particular instance, clear this out. I will go to the this application. I'm going to do run as, I'm going to do run configuration. If I'll go to the argument, okay, now here I'll go to arguments, -- Control V, and here I'm gonna say username, let's say command line, let's say command line user, command line, let's say args user. So you can see now what will happen if I'm going to run this. Only one instance only I'm changing. Only this property only I'm changing. My data source dot username, that username I'm setting it to user. But password I'll be reading from the profile. If you want to also change the password, you can also do. If you want to override that property as well, you can just do dash dash again and just copy this line, Control C and Control V it here, and give the password just right here. That is gonna override both the things. But right now I only want to override one thing, that is gonna be the user. The username I'm controlling while I'm deploying my application. Can I do apply and run? And you will see one thing I'll read from the, see the username is, we have controlled it from the command line. So command line user is gonna be printed here. And the password we have not set in the command line, so it is by default picking it from the properties file itself. I hope it is clear as well, right? So if you have some different things, then how you can control it through multiple profiles like dev and QA. Perfect. And I hope that the hierarchy is also a little bit clear. I don't have any presentation ready, but I think this is gonna make some sense, right? Now, if you imagine, if you have a URL, okay, if you want to set some URL for dev environment, then without hardcoding the URL in the application.properties file directly, you can just define the URL just right here in your dev. What is the URL? Just define the dev URL just right here. Let's say, dev URL /something. You will just define the URL here. And for the QA, you just go to the QA and then define your QA URL just right here, like my datasource.url. Then you just do equal to, then you define the QA URL just right here. Okay, so URL also you don't have to hardcode. You can just use the profiling to control it. I hope you are clear with this thing. Okay, cool. So okay, before I wrap up this thing, maybe one last question that you guys can have, that is all about the YML file. Okay, YAML, YML, YAML, whatever you are saying that. So which one we should use? We should use the properties file, or we should have the YML file? Well, that's gonna be your personal choice. What do you want to use? I'm using properties file, but Spring Boot is also going to support YML. YML extension also. I can show you something. Let me close everything. Okay, so basically instead of .properties file, we can also use YML file. So you can just do right click here. Instead of application.properties file, I'll just create an application.yml file. So let me do right click here, new file, and make it the extension should be YML. So it should be YML, or you can also say YAML, right? Both things are same. YAML basically stands for yet another markup language, maybe yet another markup language. Well, but right now this is basically the extension when basically the YML came out. But right now we can simply write YML as an extension. So if I'm going to do finish, you can see that I'll have the application.yml file, right? So what is the difference between a YML file or a properties file? Basically, there is no difference. These are just two different ways. Even some people choose this one, some people choose the properties one, because YML also makes it really simple. It's just kind of plain English, right? You can just write here something just like JSON, and it's going to be very easy to write and very easy to understand. So the purpose of this particular YML stuff is going to be make it look easy and for readability also you can use YML. For an example, you can say if you have, let's say we have the application.properties file, whatever we have written here, if you want to convert it to application.yml, then how can we do it? First of all, here we have this line up spring.profiles.active. In the application.yml, you can also write profile here. So you will just choose active one, enter, and there you go. Okay, see, this is by default get me the format, and here only you can just write here active profiles, just like my active profiles are cat and dev. So copy this, go to here to enter, Control S. Make sure that you should give a space here, one space, or you can make it double space. You can just give double space here and just give your profiles, right? So right now this is the exact equivalent of this line. Okay, so now the next thing, mycomp.name. If you want to define this particular properties in your application.yml, then you can do what? you can just give Control V, and right now I want to change it just like this. I'll just give a colon, and after that I'll just give another colon just right here, and the my company dot name is whatever I've given there, Selenium Express. Can I copy this and just go to YML and do Control V? Okay, so same thing only. I hope this is making sense, right? So my company dot name is gonna be this one. Now next one, if I want to override this particular guy, I can, this is a Spring property, right? I can just write here, basically I can just do server dot port, right? So port number also I can control. Do I have the port number? Server dot port. Okay, now if I'm going to do port, I can write the things just like this, but server, okay, now if I'll do server dot port, okay, now here I can do whatever I have written there, 8081, I can copy it to here. Okay, so you can see I'm just writing my objects just like this. The first hierarchy things, then I just give a space, I have given a colon, and because this port belongs to the server, so right now the naming, by the naming convention, I'm just going like that. Okay, and here only my value. I'll be telling more about this and explaining more, like, you know, how can we define more complex things pretty soon, but just want to give you an example, like, you know, how can we convert our application.properties file with our application.yml file. There we go. So right now we have successfully converted this guy with this guy. Right now the thing is that if we have a YML file, why do we need the application.properties file? Exactly same thing this guy will do, and this guy will do the exactly same thing. So it's gonna be your preference, like, you know, you want to use the application.properties file or you want to use the application.yml file. Let's say right now I have a YML file. I'll just remove, or I'll just delete the application.properties file. You will see that now I'm pointing to dev environment. Right now let's see whether the things are working as usual or not. Control S. Right now I got a YML file here. I'm gonna do clear out everything. I'll do right click, run as Spring Boot app. Let's see the YML is picked up or not. Well, it's not picked up. Why is that? So now it is saying we are having an issue because the animal could not be found. So because of the profiles also I have activated here, maybe I have given extra space. Can I check it right now? Can I do right click? First of all, let me do a Maven update. I'm getting some error. Update project. Force update. Okay. So let's do an update. I have just given extra spaces here. I believe I'm pretty much okay with my, you know, application.properties file. Just telling you about the YML, and not pretty much used to it, but it's, I mean, no difference, very simple. All right, so now things are working fine. Make sure that the spacing is very important. You just have to give one spaces just right here. Okay, I just have one spaces here. Now you can see now everything is getting I mean, obviously right now we have set a command line argument just right here while we have deployed the application, and this dev password is getting picked up from the dev. And right now let me go to, let me do a stop, let me change that command line argument. So run configuration, go to argument, clean this up, to apply and run. Let's see that. I think things will be okay right now. See, dev user and dev password. If I'm going to change it to QA, now obviously the QA stuff will be there. So right now the QA user and QA password is there in my console. But one more thing, guys, okay? Whenever you are writing your YML file, don't have a mixture of YML and your properties file. This is not cool. All right. So whenever you are going to your resources, you have to make sure that you have a YML, you are taking YML. This is your project standard that everyone wants to take, wants to use the YML format. You don't want to use the properties format. Then make sure to convert everything to YML. The simple thing only you have to do, Control C. I'll just create one more YML. So new file, and the name is gonna be, instead of properties for dev, I'm gonna be saying YML, enter. and right here, let me stop everything. I'll go to the dev properties, copy this two things. Can I copy the first one? Go to the YML one, paste it just right here. You don't have to do anything. You just have to give a colon, and just right here, just give another colon, give a space. That's it, right? It's your user. Now you got one more properties for password. Copy the same thing, Control C, come here, and if you want to do, you can just paste the same thing, and you can just say similarly, you can just give enter, come here, and you can change the password to dev password, and there you go. But now you got couple of data source. My data source is defined, right? Not required, because only one my data source you have defined here, so you don't have to define it for 2 times. It's already defined, so you can simply copy your password from here, give another enter, and paste it. I think this is gonna work, and remove this one, right? There you go. Now your my data source got 2 properties called username and password. Control S it, and similarly, can I now let's do one thing. I have successfully changed this thing, the dev application dev properties, to this guy, right? So now let me go to the dev properties. Let me delete it. Okay, cancel everything. Let me go to application.yml. Let me change it to dev, Control S. So you can just restart your application. This is gonna work fine. So yeah, so basically there is no issue here, guys. As you can see, everything is working good. So our application-dev.yml is right now getting picked off, and you can see the dev password is getting printed here. If you want to change the password to something else, let's say 1 I'm writing here, you can see the things will be changed to 1 and 1 just right here, just to make sure that the things are getting picked up from the YML file. And the same thing you can do with the qa.properties. Maybe I can just copy the dev, application dev YML, and just change it to QA. And you can just do the same thing. Don't have the mixture of properties file and YML file. So for the QA, I will just change it to QA user and QA user, and there you go. All right, so right now you can safely delete the qa.properties. Do a delete from here. So all the properties file are right now gone, and I have all the files in YML. So right now I can stop my server. I can go to my main YML file, and if I'm going to change it to QA, then obviously you'll see next time then when I'm going to run this particular application, the QA things are going to be picked up. Okay, and I'm going to tell you one last thing, and I'll just wrap up everything. Okay, so the QA things are getting picked up, as you can see, as I am pointing to the QA environment. The things from this particular YML file is getting picked up. So whatever the things that you will be writing here, that things only will be picked up, and you will be seeing those things only in your console. So more about the YML file, maybe we can learn in the next episode or in the next session. So right now what I'm going to do, okay, before I wrap up, I'll just tell you a small thing. Okay, so what about you want to club up this QA and dev file? Can you do it? Can you club up these 2 files to one file? Like, if you want to club up the application-dev, application-qa.yml, if you want to club up both of this YML file together, or if you want to create one more YML file, but you don't want to create more and more YML file, if you want to combine them, then can you do that? Well, I think there's a very simple way is there. If we'll go to the QA, if you want to create one more file, simply you can do what? You can just give a separator here. Okay, so right now here only you can give a separator 3 dash. Okay, 3 dash means right now this particular YML file ends here, and you want to create a new YML file. Let's say if I want to create one more YML file, let's say application-production or application-UAT. If I want to create one more, and instead of creating one more, I can just give a separator here, and I can start writing the properties for my production. I can just copy this and just write the properties for my production just right here. So fine, this is looking good right now. So here only you just need to make sure one thing. Let's say imagine like this is one file and this is one file, and you are separating that with this 3 dash or 3 hyphen, And if you want to give a profile name to this, let's say right now this data source is for my production, so you can just give another attribute here, spring colon profile. Let me just write spring profile. So which one is that? I think it's just spring colon profile. Okay, so let me go with this one. This is the one, spring colon profile, and you can give your profile name just right here. Okay, let's say my profile name, I'll just give here production or prod. Okay, so what does it mean? Make sure to give a space. Okay, or you can just give couple here if you want to make it more readable. So right now what does it mean is that I got a new profile or new YML file, and this YML file name is production, just like this particular YML profile name is QA, this name is dev, this particular file name is gonna be production or prod. This is gonna be my profile name, and let's say my prod username is gonna be prod user, and password is gonna be prod pass. Okay, so now let's say if I want to point to this particular YML file, treat this as a different YML file. Okay, right now I'm writing everything just right here just to show you that we can actually combine multiple files together. So you can just take this prod just right here, and from here you just copy the prod, you just go to the application.yml, change this QA to prod, Control S it, and wait for this to reload. If I have already stopped it, maybe I can restart it from here. Springboot app. So finger crossed. Well, some issues are there. Debug. Okay, it's not able to load it. So prod is not working. Why is that? So I believe, oh, all right. Okay. So if I'll go to this application -qa.yml, so basically I have created one more, this prod I have created here inside this particular YML. I'm going to cut it from here. So let's not do it in the qa.yml. I'm supposed to do it in the application.yml. Okay, so here I can just do the same thing. Can I do a control V here? Can I do control S right now? And can I just restart my application? So it is already pointing to prod, and there you go, prod user and prod password. I'm able to print it just right here, and this separator is right now working, and I'm actually combining or creating one more YML file. I can think like that. One more profile I'm creating just right here with this particular my data source property. So right now if we're going to change it to QA, then obviously the QA stuff will work. Can I wait to reload it? Okay, QA stuff is working. Can I change it to dev? So dev stuff should work. So dev user, if you want to change it to production, and make sure that I don't have a separate file for production, I have created that particular instance just right here only, right? So I hope that is making sense right now. And that's it, guys. So just do a little bit of practice more about the YML file, maybe tomorrow and in the coming up sessions, but I will prefer more the properties over YML because that's my personal preference. And one more thing, guys, if you are not able to see this particular mark here, and if you're not getting auto suggestion, just make sure to do a right click, go to open with, okay, and make sure to choose this particular editor. Click on other and choose for YML properties editor, okay, and just select this, use it for all YML files, and make sure to use this particular editor to open the YML file so that you'll get some auto suggestions and things like that. Hopefully this is working. And also, instead of writing things just like this, if you want to break it down with a list, then you can just give dash just right here. So instead of giving comma, and instead of separating this profiles, the number of profiles that you have, you can actually create a list out of that, right? Like cat prod. I think this also should work, or I'm getting any exception. Well, the things are working fine just right here. You can change it to QA, and the QA stuff should load it off. Can I check it here? Yeah, the QA stuff is loading up. Alright guys, so it's already been 1.5 hours, and I hope that these things clears out a few of your confusion that you are asking me. Maybe in my first Spring Boot class you are asking about the profiling, but I think I have given you a little bit of information today, and more information whenever I feel it's gonna be the right time. I'll be letting you know about those things as well. But regarding the YML file, I'm gonna speak a little more in the next episode. And also, whatever the question that you have, I don't know, if you'll be watching this video tomorrow or day after tomorrow, just post all your doubts in your respective groups. So I'll be answering your questions right there. And if I will not be available, you know the reason, right? And okay, once the cyclone basically gone, I'll be there in your group, and I'll be answering each and everyone's questions just right there. So see you guys tomorrow. Stay safe, and bye bye.